Playing games not meant for the dance mat, on a dance mat, is one of the classic bits. How can it go wrong?
Mason, turn around! What the f*** are you doing, man? Jesus Christ!
Oh.
So, I like dance games. Somewhat recently I bought one of these, a Stepmania X stage. Stepmania X? Stepmaniacs? I don't know. Very bulky and very expensive piece of kit for playing dance games at home. It's very good and I've been enjoying it a lot. So I've been getting back into the game and talking about it on stream as I speedrun other stuff sometimes, and every time I did this someone would ask, so when's Silent Hill on a DDR mat? Because my Twitch chat thinks everything in my life filters through the lens of Silent Hill and that I have nothing else I like doing in my life.
Because I'm primarily known over there for speedruns of Silent Hill games. This video is the result of me capitulating to peer pressure and doing it so they will stop asking me about it and let me talk about my dance games in peace. So here's the challenge. Complete Silent Hill 1 on a dance mat, and for additional spice I elected to do this on hard mode just to be as definitive as possible. Anything you can normally do on a controller is allowed as long as you can somehow physically execute it on a dance mat, no other restrictions. A lot of challenge runs need a glossary to explain themselves, but this one is pretty straightforward. The first thing that needs addressing before we actually get to gameplay is the controller itself, naturally. Most obviously is the fact that, as you can see from the footage, I am not in fact using the proper, bulky, hardcore controller. Why? Why not use the arcade-grade equipment I do have? Well, the first reason is logistics. That thing sits in another room of my house than the one I stream from, and is 200 pounds of solid steel, so moving it is a project by itself. I would rather not do that. The second problem is the number of inputs, because that's the first thing we need to figure out before we can even get this challenge off the ground. The Stepmania X stage only has 5 inputs tops out of the box, because it's intended for use with a 5-panel game. But we need more than that for Silent Hill, so instead I'm using a more generic PlayStation 2 foam pad because these were made to accommodate the console versions of DDR games, so they tend to have extra buttons on the corners that we can utilize for actions. Rather uniquely for a PlayStation 1 game, Silent Hill allows full button remapping for anything on the controller, which is the main thing that allows this challenge to be possible. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of requests under this video for different games done this way, but the reason I chose Silent Hill 1 in specific was because of this feature. As in, this is an actual PlayStation 2 dance map plugged into an actual PlayStation 2, so I needed to pick a game that would be able to accommodate that on the real hardware. So I then needed to create a control binding that would allow me to access all game-critical functions. The default controller bindings will not work for this purpose. The image I'm using isn't the exact same pad as the one I have, but it has the same layout, so this will do. I map action and cancel to the top left and top right buttons respectively. We need an action button to open doors or do anything, really, so this is required. We can double up and also make cancel control the flashlight too. That might not sound like it's a very important thing, but it is also a critical action since Harry will not interact with many objects and doors in the game world unless his flashlight is on, and some enemies behave more aggressively when it's on, so being able to control this is actually very important. We also need a menu button, since without access to the menu we can't use puzzle items or heal. Mercifully, these pads do have select and start buttons at the very top, so we can use those here. And finally, we need aim map to something. We need this so we can aim weapons and shoot enemies. Pacifism isn't a valid option in Silent Hill. I bind this to the back right button. There's a specific rationale for this decision that will come up later, so please look forward to that. By default, aim is bound to R2, which I do not have on the dance mat, so this renders the default binds unworkable. And that's it! You may have noticed this leaves one of the face buttons out, and that's because I don't really need any more inputs. I could bind it to map, but I don't need a map, so I didn't. This is approximately the minimum viable number of inputs necessary to complete the game. Note that due to the lack of shoulder buttons, both strafing directions and being able to control the camera are out. In hindsight, I probably could have mapped the camera to the face button I wasn't using, but it didn't occur to me, wasn't a huge deal, but it did make this even harder than it needed to be. So setup complete, pardon the preamble, let's get to it. Silent Hill 1 hard mode on a dance mat.
And... ball!
The intro of the game allows me some time to get to grips with basic movement, since there's no initial threat. Experience I will sorely need going forward when I actually have to evade enemies on purpose. Alright, now just hold forward. Got my hands on my hips like I'm posing for a fashion show. I have to open a door here, very problematic. No, too far. I crash into basically every wall, which is an omen of ill portent, but the only thing I have to do here is die on purpose to advance the game past the opening nightmare sequence, and failure I can provide. In the cafe shortly after, I collect both health drinks. I'm going to need all the healing I can get my hands on for this run, and you automatically gain the handgun at this point, and I prepare to do battle with the first enemy.
Ooh!
What's that?
The cross input. In this way, I am
Radio.
pressing action
What's
and
going on
aim
with
at the
me?
same time with a cross kind of input. I hope I never need to move while doing this, because I don't have a third leg. Hope I never need to move while doing this.
You use selected words! What are you planning?
Hooah!
This is not a dream.
Yeah, so in order to attack, I have to press aim and action at the same time, which I've mapped to square and cross, respectively, so every time I need to attack, I will have to adopt the attacking stance. But we did clear this basic hurdle, so the control scheme checks out so far. Now outside in Silent Hill proper, I attempt to brave a detour to the nearby convenience store area for extra supplies. This is an important consideration that I will be making many times over as I progress, how safe it is to try to detour and collect extra resources. Normally this isn't so bad because I have relatively good control over my movement, but on a dance pad, this is much more uncertain. Like here I managed to wedge myself between the door and an object and end up having to shoot the nearby air screamer down. I didn't take any damage in the process, and between health and ammo, health is the infinitely more valuable resource of the two, so it wasn't a bad outcome. But this is an early example of how me going out of my way to try and collect extra resources can potentially go more wrong than I expected, owing to the lack of fine motor control I generally expect to have. In this first open area of the game, our goal is to collect 3 keys to open the back door in someone's house. The first key is collected without trouble, the second key is in the back of this police car, and I've got a pretty good lineup for it, but the air screamer that patrols that key just randomly happened to be in my exact movement trajectory, so it pushed me off course, forcing me to loop around. This too is a common occurrence across this challenge. Slightly missing your target can be very punishing. In this instance, I simply shoot down the enemy and take my time, but I won't always have that option. This is the easiest part of the game after all, the space is wide open and the enemy's relatively weak. Same kind of thing happens when aiming for the third key. I miss my target and it becomes easier to just shoot the patrolling air screamer, but this provides an example of an element of randomness inherent to this. Harry can just randomly miss shots. It becomes more likely the further away you are, but it's actually sensitive to difficulty if you can believe that. You're more likely to whiff your shots from even middle ranges on hard mode. I get bopped by this air screamer, but I can pick up the nearby health drink to make up for that. Everything deals 150% damage relative to normal mode on hard, so even small hits like this stack up fast. Fortunately from here I get to just hold forward for a bit as I have all 3 keys and only need to head to the end of the street. There are various side alleys I could duck into for extra ammo and health, but I make the decision not to risk extra encounters for returns that likely aren't worth it. There's only handgun ammo in this early stage, and the handgun falls off in usefulness extremely fast past a certain point. We'll save the scavenging for later. While I mosey on over, I'd like to point out that for the sake of stability, I have actually duct taped the dance mat to the floor as I play. If you've ever played DDR on a soft mat, you've probably experienced the age-old problem of it sliding around as you play because it's simply a thin sheet of plastic. Countermeasures are necessary, and furthermore, this is one of those pads with a foam insert that makes it slightly heavier, which helps a little. It was actually pretty stable over the course of this challenge. I wouldn't want to play max 300 on it though. Getting the key out of the doghouse, I actually hit a really smooth line into the key pickup, which is a big win for me getting used to controlling this, but then I completely beef actually getting into the house and get bit a bunch, which knocks me down to orange health, forcing a health drink. Not great to lose health drinks on small fry like this. Damage on hard mode is really high and health items are not infinite, so there's a very real risk of getting myself into a borderline unwinnable state if I don't avoid damage as much as possible. It's a pretty straight shot from here on wide open streets to the school, but the world goes dark at this point in the game, and this is where I leverage the flashlight button to good effect, because enemies track you very poorly if you keep your flashlight off. The trade-off is normally that you can't see what you're doing, but it's no problem if you know the layout of Silent Hill 1 better than you know the town you live in. So I make it to the first major area, the school, with no major difficulties. Here is how the first 2 minutes inside the school went.
Mason, turn around! What the fuck are you doing, man? Jesus Christ!
You could say I got schooled. Fortunately, this doesn't set me back very far since entering the school is considered a checkpoint. I don't know if a lot of people know that Silent Hill isn't exclusively reliant on the fixed save points for continuing after a death. There are a small handful of automatic checkpoints, and this is one of them. This is where the difficulty increases considerably, since the school is full of rooms that contain 2, 3, or even 4 of these little dudes at once, and they are, despite what you might expect for this being the early part of the game, actually one of the more dangerous enemies we can encounter. If you get grabbed, you take damage rapidly until you can mash out, which is harder on the dance pad for obvious reasons, and a subtle thing is that it takes more inputs to mash out of grabs on hard mode. While grabbed, one of the other enemies in the room can potentially slash you for huge damage. Harry can basically only survive one of these sequences on hard, 2 will just kill him. Methodically picking off enemies one at a time is an okay strategy for dealing with this, provided you can get the enemies in the room to not attack you all at once, which is not always a given. And an additional wrinkle I was having trying to make progress is when entering my attacking pose on the dance mat, Harry would keep re-aiming his gun between every single shot fired. This kept causing him to cycle his target between every shot, which has pros and cons, but for the most part was just annoying. I sincerely do not know why this was happening. It's just holding aim and shoot together like a regular controller. I don't see any reason for the dance pad to be causing this, but it sure was doing that. My game plan going into this run didn't account for this kind of bizarre behavior, and I still don't have a good explanation for this, so this was not a welcome curveball. However, relatively speaking, the mumblers, that's what these enemies are called, aren't incredibly perceptive, so turning your light off can cause them to have difficulty locating you in the dark. I try to make use of this, but run into another quirk of hard mode, which is the significantly harsher accuracy penalty incurred for shooting in the dark. On hard, even if your light is on, Harry will still find a way to miss about half his shots even from a roughly middle distance, which is pretty annoying. With the light off, that gets so much worse. The handgun is bad. But it's all we've got right now, so it's what I'm forced to go with. I'm going into perhaps unnecessary detail about this because pretty much the entire school area consists of encounters in small rooms with 2 to 4 of these enemies, so it's a constantly reoccurring situation. It's very tough to deal with. There aren't many good options for my controller situation here. I'd like to play a slow and methodical game since quick reactions and precision aren't the forte of someone playing with their feet. But I am often forced to instead make the decision to try and quickly swerve past enemies instead, which is easier said than done. Generally, if I knew I was going to pass through a room multiple times, I tried to clear it of enemies. But areas I was only going to pass through once, like the hallway outside the gold medallion, the first key item we need to collect, I just grabbed what I needed and dipped immediately. But even clearing the enemies out isn't always a permanent guarantee of safety, because in some rooms, enemies respawn on hard. Great! I've also got a limited ability to tell when this has happened. Normally the player would be able to hear the radio noise before an enemy gets into view, but I didn't actually have any game audio when I was doing this challenge. That wasn't part of the initial plan, it arose as a consequence of my streaming setup, because my audio setup assumes I'll be using wired headphones, but that wasn't an option here unless I wanted to trip on the wire while I was jumping around and break my neck, so I just went without audio for the entire run. Being audioless made the puzzle I needed to complete for the second medallion very fun, since this relies on being able to tell which keys don't make noise, but to me, none of them make noise. But I redeemed myself with some decent evasion on the way out. Now we gotta go. Any fight I can afford not to take is a huge boon to me at this point, since every fight has the potential to just kill me. From here I'm able to make it to the infirmary, save my game, and get back to the courtyard. I use the medallion and then navigate to the boiler room to turn it on without incurring any damage and only stopping to fight the respawning enemy outside the boiler room. All I need to do now is navigate back to the courtyard via the same path, but my execution is off, and this rapidly turns into a huge shit show with the results of me needing to spend a medkit, but I mercifully avoid dying and I'm able to enter the clock tower, which takes me to the Otherworld school. The shift to the Otherworld brings only one new enemy, which are the little cockroaches, which aren't incredibly threatening in terms of damage, but do an extremely good job of distracting Harry from shooting the more dangerous mumblers, especially with my little controller quirk where Harry keeps attempting to change his target after every shot. But by and large, the encounter dynamic doesn't change a whole lot. Every room is still extremely threatening, and I'm constantly forced to make a lot of difficult choices between fight or flight, one room at a time. I'm doing this little ritual where I prepare myself mentally every single time I open a door and thinking about where I'm going to try to immediately book it to the next room or attempt to engage directly, and mistakes are really punishing, so I'm getting stressed about every single encounter. Validating the stress, I die for a second time trying to dodge my way through a room just after saving in the Otherworld Infirmary from just getting grabbed twice. But second attempt at that room, I'm somehow much luckier and it just magically works out for me. This Otherworld Infirmary save, incidentally, is the only save we're getting in this entire section of the game. We can't safely navigate back to this room and there are no inherent checkpoints, so I'm forced to clear from here in one shot.
I do get some help at this point, which is the shotgun, a significantly stronger weapon than the handgun, but we've had no opportunity to pick up ammo for it, and shortly after I get boxed into a corner near a door, but just not quite close enough for the game to count it as trying to open the door, and die for a third time. Evasion is the right call here, and I get it right on my next attempt, but that's really the shape of this run. Overshoot a door by a tiny amount and die instantly. That's the challenge run.
I use the shotgun and the 6 shells that come with it to deal with a room of 3 mumblers and a roach, and it's a worthy cause because I have to pass through this room a minimum of 4 times total, but it's a pretty rough encounter and I still lose a medkit in the process. It also then proves to be an immediate waste of time and resources to have even bothered, because it turns out this is one of the rooms where enemies respawn. There's no real way to know this ahead of time, it's just a fun prank the game plays on you. I'm pretty pissed after realizing this, but now we know that that room is hopeless, I just gotta book it. I make the decision to head to the locker first to collect the first of 2 keys we need to complete the Otherworld School, because I can pick up shotgun shells en route, which I will need for the boss at bare minimum. On the way back, my weird re-aiming control quirk actually comes in clutch as Harry swivels around with pinpoint accuracy to plant handgun shots in 3 enemies, perfectly stunning all of them in turn and clearing the room out with no damage. 90% of the time this quirk just sucks and gets me hit, but 10% of the time it turns Harry into goddamn John Wick. I somehow muddle my way through evading enemies to get back out to the stairwell, even though I have absolutely no goddamn clue what's even happening in this footage. How was I playing the game like this? The second key is an easier get. Very few enemies stand between us and it, so a small digression, because I imagine I'm going to get comments about this unless I address it, but if you've played the North American version of Silent Hill, you might remember the enemies in the school looking a little different. I'm playing the Japanese version, no reason in specific, it's just the version I happen to have. And these enemies underwent a design change between the North American and Japanese releases. According to the official book, Lost Memories, Silent Hill Chronicle, this is due to the design used in the American version getting rejected by the Japanese censors. For what it's worth, this has absolutely no gameplay implication, these 2 enemies behave exactly the same and have all the same damage values and so on. It's just a cosmetic change, but if I don't acknowledge it, people are going to ask, so here's your acknowledgement. There are otherwise no meaningful changes even visually between the Japanese and American versions, no balance changes like the Resident Evil games have. Anyway, enough of that. 2 keys in hand, I only need to cross through the newly unlocked part of the school to make it to the boss, which means only 2 real rooms stand between me and victory. But should I beef my movement at any point and die, I'm going back to the start of the entire area, since as I mentioned, the last time I had any opportunity to save the game was before even picking up the shotgun. So I am like, visibly stressing about this last set of rooms. In room 1, I play it far back and clear the room with the strongest shotgun since I've had time to collect ammo. This goes pretty well. Room 2, I try to run through the room without fighting, but almost immediately get caught in a pile of 3 dudes, nearly dying in the process. I attempt to just break for the door, but one of the enemies actively body blocks me by walking away in the same direction but not actually attacking. It's like when you're trying to overtake someone on the street but they don't know you're there. What is going on here? This causes me to get stuck in the awkward corner near the door, but not close enough to actually open it, so I end up spending my very last health drink in the ensuing chaos, but I eventually manage to awkwardly shuffle to the door, barely avoiding getting killed and setting myself back half an hour. This gets us to the boss, Splithead, which I am visibly relieved about getting to. You might think I ought to be stressed instead, but entering the boss is one of those checkpoints I talked about earlier, so even if I die here, no progress will be lost. And die I do, basically immediately. Then again. And again. My relief of reaching a checkpoint quickly giving way to frustration. Splithead, you see, has an instant kill attack. This boss attacks by opening its mouth and attempting to eat Harry. You deal damage by striking in this narrow interval when the mouth is open and moving away before it can close on you because you die instantly if it does. This requires reaction speed and precision, neither of which are things I am very equipped to accomplish. Now I get to reveal why I bound my aim button the way I did. By placing aim on one of the face buttons on the back of the pad, I'm able to press aim and down at the same time if I plant my foot in just the right spot. In dance gamer parlance, hitting 2 arrows with 1 foot is called a bracket. I don't know if this actually counts because soft mats don't have brackets, they're called that because of the actual metal brackets the pads use, but whatever, I digress. This allows me to perform the wizard act of walking slightly backwards while firing. If timed absolutely perfectly, this allows me to barely slip out of harm's way while counterattacking. If I'm early, I step away before it becomes vulnerable. If I'm late, I just die. All kinds of things make this harder than it sounds. For one thing, this is where I'm finally willing to go ahead and say that my mat just sucks. A bad craftsman blames his tools and all that, but if you give a stonemason toothpicks and ask him to build the Taj Mahal, he will rightly call you a prat. The buttons are unresponsive and they cross-talk like crazy, giving me the wrong inputs at the wrong time, which was annoying before but actively fatal now. For second, this fight is actually random in a way that's tricky to perceive. The speed with which Splithead opens and closes his mouth has an unpredictable speed, which gives you a semi-random leniency for how on point you have to be with getting out of the way. A third wrinkle is that if Splithead walks directly into you before it attacks, it can cause Harry to do a little stumble. This will almost always kill you because it'll stop you from immediately backpedaling. So I die, and I die, and I die. I get mad at the game. I get mad at my pad. I contemplate the distinct possibility that this might just not be possible with a slightly malfunctioning dance pad, which would really harsh the buzz, but eventually... Lucky! Lucky, lucky, lucky! Fuck yes! me fast hits. I really thought I was dead after that nudge. I was like, fuck, he nudged me, I'm dead. I got lucky. I got lucky that was the hit that killed.
It's a world record!
I couldn't even tell you what I did right here. The only strategy change was trying to make smaller movements instead of running all over the place between every hit, but candidly, I think I just got lucky on this attempt. I wish I had a more thrilling story that makes me look cooler, but I kinda just bashed my head against this until it worked. Whatever the method, I'm out of the school, the first major area complete. So I get it relatively easy for a while since we returned to the wide-open streets of Silent Hill en route to the hospital. I vent my frustrations at the previous area by yelling at birds.
None for you! No!
And I get a needed break by letting the church cutscenes rock. There were basically no cutscenes for the entire first hour and a half of this run past the intro, so yeah, definitely feeling tired at this point. I lower the bridge and get to the other side of town, and at this point I could explore this side of Silent Hill for resources, but I choose not to dawdle and head straight to the next major area, the hospital. My rationale for this is that romper enemies patrol this new area, and they're pretty difficult to deal with in the daylight sections of the game. Their weakness is their poor visibility, and we can't exploit that when it's bright out. Bumbling around the hospital, I realize I've been missing something this entire time. A thing every professional dance game player ought to have.
Ah!
A bar, of course, to stabilize my body. Enable greater precision for less exertion. Perfect. Of course, I mostly brought this out as a joke, it's not actually that helpful. Please spare me your holding the bar is cheating comments, it's not 2008 anymore. Fun anecdote about this bar though is that my dad built it for me. A couple years ago my parents visited my place, just as parents do, and I had a jankier dance game setup visible and I was using a small furniture dolly with the wheels taken off as a bar. I know, limitation breeds ingenuity. But my dad saw that and on the spot decided to go to a local hardware store, buy a bunch of PVC piping and built the bar in an afternoon. I thought that was cool. I have a proper metal pad and bar setup now, but I still hang on to this, it comes in handy sometimes. Thanks, Dad. In the time I've spent telling this anecdote, I've also accidentally made this run harder for myself. You see, I intended to collect the red liquid. Look, you can see here I even picked up the bottle to put the red liquid in. This would allow me to use it on a later boss for an instant kill, and is also a prerequisite of getting the best ending, which I was going to aim for because I figured it'd make the run feel more complete. But if you forget to pick it up during the brief interval you're in the normal hospital, you don't get a second chance to get it. Oops. So now I have to deal with an extra boss fight later, technically making this the hardest variant of the run I could possibly have done. I could have loaded a save when I realized my mistake, but I made the snap decision it would actually be cooler to fight every boss. I don't know where past me got off having that degree of confidence, but he loves causing problems, the cocky twat. Okay, so I'm a bit concerned about this bit coming up.
It was no concern at all!
Snapping back to the game, Otherworld Hospital itself is mainly populated with nurse enemies who have a fairly similar attacking strategy to the children in the school. They grab you while another one in the same room tries to slash at you, but there are two crucial differences. One, they don't react strongly to the light, so I get to keep my flashlight on for the entire hospital without much penalty. And two, the biggest one, their grab doesn't actually do any damage. It looks like it does, you'd be forgiven for thinking it does, but it doesn't. Couple that with the fact their slashing attack is slower, I have accrued plenty of shotgun ammo at this point, and pushing away a nurse grab causes Harry to knock back every enemy around him, means nurses are actually not very threatening compared to the children in the school. Compared to the dense difficulty of traversing every new room in the school, the hospital was way relaxed. You can take your time and just plow through them. It's not particularly punishing if an enemy gets near you, and in a lot of rooms it's easy to just run away. It respawns.
Who cares if it respawns? Just go!
I only took damage a couple of times towards the end of the area in the smaller rooms with 3 nurses. The school made me bleed all of my health items, but the hospital helped me to build back up a significant amount. Not much to say, it genuinely took me only about 15 minutes to get through this entire part of the game. So during the next intermission, after heading over to the antique store for the next set piece, I take a breather during the long cutscene by reading 7 Games by Oliver Roeder, which you can get for yourself from this video's sponsor, or no one. Nobody wanted to sponsor this video. I can't believe it, man, that's such a good segue and I have to waste it on this joke. Incidentally, if you want to get in contact with me, my business email is punchy@, skipping ahead a bit to the next boss fight, because it's mostly all cutscenes otherwise. Twin Feeler is a boss that pops up out of the ground and spits clouds of gas at you, with the difficulty again being a narrow opportunity to counterattack. The key is to try and bait the boss into crossing a metal grate in the arena that prevents it from burrowing. This is over pretty fast. I do a very good job of getting volleys in, and in the end I only end up spending a single health drink on this fight. I also collect the final weapon, the rifle. The rifle isn't actually the strongest weapon in the game, it's outclassed by the shotgun at point-blank ranges, but the big point for it is that it remains accurate even at very long ranges, which enables you to stay safe when attacking. Given that what I will generously call my playstyle here benefits from the ability to be patient, this is a great get. I head over to the next boss across a darkened Silent Hill, which I have to do mainly in the dark or risk drawing aggro from every enemy across several blocks. I somehow get bit by a dog a couple times in the dark, which forces another health drink out of me, so this random dog managed to deal roughly the same amount of damage to me as the previous boss. Very cool. But I make it to Float Stinger, which I was not looking forward to. This is a very dynamic fight that takes place against an enemy who moves around a whole lot. Float Stinger's only two attacks are spitting acid and stabbing you with its stinger, the latter of which is very damaging, only taking about 3 strikes to kill you on hard mode. I do not handle this fight very elegantly. I'm kind of just running all over the goddamn place in wide circles, intermittently stopping to attack, trying my level best to avoid getting stabbed and needing to spend too many healing items. Not like that. Woo! But somehow I do, clumsily, stumble through this on my first attempt, spending 2 first aid kits and 1 health drink. Not bad, if you ask me. I was totally expecting that to be far rougher. I'm kind of impressed with myself here. So we proceed on to the sewers, which starts presenting us with dynamics from the Nightmare School again. The very first encounter here screws me up because 2 fast-moving high-damage enemies close in while a couple of cockroaches also close in, seemingly just to confuse the auto-aim into shooting the wrong target. In the blink of an eye, I've eaten 3 more health drinks and I'm not finding them faster than I'm using them. I'm especially struggling with the smaller cockroach enemies, weirdly enough, because I feel like auto-aim keeps giving me the rawest deal possible when trying to fight groups of them. They're not very damaging, but on hard mode it does still add up. I get at least 1 decent dodge in.
What an evasion!
Before tanking far too many hits, shuffling to the exit. I'm down to a single health drink and a handful of med packs. Not great. We're in the resort area now, which is probably the part of the game I'm least familiar with because it's barely present in the any % speedrun. But I've committed to the good ending path here, so I explore around, replenish my health drink supply a bit, and complete the little side quest where Harry discovers a bottle of red liquid in a motorcycle. This locks us onto the good ending path where we'll fight the true final boss of this game. Now I can skedaddle away from the resort and over to the lighthouse. This area is full of enemies that are light sensitive, so I end up doing almost all of it in the dark, fleeing from all enemies while basically blind, which was difficult but not very visually exciting, so let me skip ahead a bit. The second sewers features an unwelcome reappearance of the children enemies, still the most dangerous enemy in the game, which scams a full health kit off me before I emerge in the amusement park where we have to fight Sybil. This boss is the one that can be instantly won by using the red liquid I forgot to pick up, but fighting her is much harder, so here's how that impulsive decision panned out. Epic. I don't think my first attempt at this lasted even 5 seconds. Sybil's gunshot attack is genuinely the most damaging attack in the entire game. As you would imagine, you're being shot with a gun. It can kill you from green health pretty easily, since Silent Hill has no magic pixel kind of system that prevents that sort of thing from happening.
What the fuck? That's bullshit! 0 shot! No fucking way did that hit me!
There's a couple of approaches here. It's possible to progress this fight to the second phase by baiting Sybil into wasting all of her handgun shots. She doesn't actually have infinite ammo, which is a fun detail. But I attempt to achieve victory via damage, and I'm eventually able to do this with a successful volley of near point-blank shotgun blasts. The second phase is much less dangerous than the first because Sybil discards her gun and attempts hand-to-hand combat, which removes her most threatening attack and also means she will actively put herself in the most effective range of your shotgun. So despite getting strangled once because Mason decided to walk backwards in a circle due to pad crosstalk, I mop up quickly from here. We proceed on to the final area, and I would like to hang on to every health item I possibly can because I have no idea how much hassle the final boss is going to be under these conditions. Things start off pretty light with only nurse enemies, which are again dispatched easily with the shotgun. I experience a classic frustration of the genre.
What an absolute dumb idiot.
And then advance on. I'm playing a very slow and patient game here, methodically clearing out the rooms with the rifle. This is where the strength of the rifle comes into its fullest effect, because in this final area, enemies that are like the child enemies in the school but barely visible start showing up. And the rifle really helps with making these encounters less dangerous by enabling me to snipe them out from half the room away. It's not a complete remedy because sometimes it'll respawn them more or less on top of you when you re-enter certain rooms. At this point I wish to reiterate that I'm playing largely without audio, so I'm relying on things like camera sway to tell me if there's an enemy waddling into range. For instance, in this clip, I'm firing into the void, not actually sure if I'm hitting anything. I can now tell while I'm editing this that my intuition was good because I did absolutely hit and kill an enemy in the darkness because I can hear the radio going off signaling an enemy in the room, but I couldn't actually tell what I was doing at the time. Despite all the odds stacked against me, I have somehow trucked onto the final boss. Kaufman hucks a vial of extremely minging Paradise Punch lemonade at Incubator.
Suck your dad! It's minging, he's fucking minging!
Giving birth to Incubus, the true final boss. My game plan for this is extremely straightforward, albeit very flawed. Walk forward, attempt to do some damage, and then run wildly in a circle to dodge the lightning attack as best I can. This is flawed because you have to turn a surprisingly tight circle to avoid the lightning, and also, I can't hear when the boss is charging the lightning. I didn't account for this on my first attempt and died very fast. I have to feel out the timing by and large. On my second go, I somehow do avoid the first volley, but all successive volleys I eat straight on the nose without getting a lot done, going down to only 4 health drinks remaining in a flash. And then...
Oh shit, I won! What? Call it.
just like that, I won! A little known quirk of this fight is that your shots do more damage if you're able to land them while the boss is charging their lightning. I couldn't hear this at the time, but almost all of my final barrage of shotgun blasts landed while he was charging. In other words, I dealt a ton of damage very quickly, essentially damage racing it and winning. The next lightning strike would probably have killed me too, so not a moment too soon. And here's our results screen. Silent Hill 1's hardest difficulty, completed on a dance mat in roughly 4 hours. I got 3 stars out of 10 and died 20 times total. Man, harsh crowd.
Don't ask me for shit ever again, okay? No more gimmick Silent Hill. Ooh, do another game on the dance mat. Ooh, do Silent Hill 1 with a power glove. No! No more of that! This is the final word on that gimmick, okay? None of that! No! No more! You get this! You get 1! And no more!
No, seriously, I know I'm gonna get tons of comments suggesting other silly peripherals. I know you're gonna do it. You think you're so clever. But no more. I consider this the definitive, final, and authoritative gimmick controller run. No more of that. Goodbye! Hey, thanks for watching the challenge. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and all that good stuff. I'm not exclusively a challenge run YouTuber, but I do like doing these from time to time. This was all live streamed too, so if you want to catch these live, checking out my YouTube or my Twitch is the best way to do that. Also consider subscribing to the Patreon to be in these credits if you enjoy this stuff, since that supports me in these silly endeavors along with the more serious endeavors you find on this channel. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.